Controversial statement to start the video off with, but look at your portfolio, because if you're allocated to Western auto, things like Ford, GM, Stellantis, you are holding onto a bag of value traps. I know, it's a controversial opinion, but you look at the single digit PE ratio and you think it's cheap. And it's understandable. However, you are wrong. It's not cheap. It's technologically insolvent. You are a long Blackberry call. That's all you are. Long a call option in the equivalent of a Blackberry in a world that just printed the iPhone. My name is Justin Benton and welcome to the House of Trade. If you're still watching after these first 30 seconds, allow me to introduce what we're talking about. Well, while the Western media has been selling you the China collapse narrative, focusing on the real estate deleveraging and the liquidity crunches, a company in Shenzhen has been quietly executing the greatest industrial arbitrage in history. Am I overblown? Am I speaking in superlatives? I don't think so. Because when I tell you the name of this company, you've probably seen it before, and you probably think, yeah, they are the new upstarts who have silently taken over the world of automotives. They are called BYD. Do you know what BYD stands for? I only realized that recently what BYD actually stands for. It stands for Build Your Dreams. It sounds like a retail meme stock, but make no mistake, this is the single largest idiosyncratic risk to the Western industrial complex in an entire age. So here is the alpha that I think the Wall Street bunch are all missing. The market is pricing China like it's still 2005. You know, China, the copycat nation, stealing intellectual property, that was the narrative du jour, right? That is the old thesis, in my opinion. The new reality is a structural shift in the innovation curve completely east. BYD, Build Your Dreams, isn't just a car company, it's a vertically integrated, nuclear-powered, PhD-fueled industrial conglomerate that has achieved cost of goods sold dominance that Tesla can't even model in the real world, yet alone in Excel. They have literally mastered the electrical stack in a way that makes Western capex look like charity work. So today, with the House of Trade with Justin Benton, we are going to be re-underwriting the thesis. Is BYD the greatest company on earth? And you just haven't realized it yet. Or is it the catalyst for a secular bear market in Western manufacturing? Both things are very important in terms of the outlook for your portfolio. So let's look at the balance sheet, the unit economics, and the terrifying math that probably should, at the end of the day, convince you that you probably should be allocated to Chinese equities, especially in the automotive sector. All right, so let's talk about BYD's supply chain. To understand why legacy auto is essentially dead money, you have to understand the supply chain inefficiencies with legacy Western automobile companies. The Western model is built on integration. Ford is essentially a fancy project manager. They outsource everything else. They pay Bosch for the brakes, LG builds their battery cells, and Nvidia for the compute. This is margin stacking. Every counterparty in the chain needs about a 20% EBITDA margin. By the time the unit hits the dealer lot, the costs are already bloated, and that's why they can't be globally competitive. And that's why EV can sell an amazing spec model for 30 grand, whereas the base unit cost of an electric vehicle in the West is like 50. And that's where the unit economics really make BYD a national and international champion. So in terms of unit economics, BYD, they are the equivalent of the full stack of the developers of the world. Their CEO is a man called Wang Xianfu. He isn't just a salesman pumping sentiment on Twitter. He comes from a chemist background. He's a chemical engineer. And when BYD builds a unit, they capture the margin at every layer of the stack. If we're talking upstream, they own the lithium mines. Something that like even Western nations don't even have exposure to or have dominance over in terms of ownership and supply chains. When we talk about the midstream, they manufacture the blade battery. There's a zero external premium in terms of them procuring it, right? And downstream, finally, they fabricate their own semiconductors and their own motors. They are literally vertically integrated par excellence. Like vertical integration, if you were to write a book and have a definitional model of it, it would be BYD in terms of vertical integration. It allows them to execute this deflationary pricing strategy that looks like dumping and is labeled dumping, but is actually just operational and economies of scale leverage. They've achieved that price parity between electric vehicles and internal combustion engines without government subsidies, which is quite phenomenal, right? And I suppose that takes us back into the involution that China is trying to avoid, competing everyone down to zero, where profit margins are completely squashed. But I digress. The macro implication is actually quite brutal. Western companies have a negative gross margin on their electric vehicles. That's wild. They're burning through free cash flow on every single unit. But BYD is printing profits selling their cars, like the Seagull, which is a high-spec electric vehicle, for $10,000. Like Western nations could only dream of producing highly efficient, highly attractive, highly competitive, highly functional, and high-performance vehicles like BYD for $10,000. $10,000! That's not a car price. That's a rounding error on a luxury SUV, right? The Western nations are trading on brand equity, like the Audis, the Mercedes, the BMWs, but BYD is literally trading on physics and the attractiveness of pricing at those scales. So BYD have achieved this in a variety of ways, but one of the ways that Chinese companies are outperforming and why you should probably be reassessing your allocation to Chinese equities is the human capital thesis, the moat they built around education. To really get the long thesis on China, we need to talk about the human capital and the return on investment. Let's look at the two avatars of the economy, MBA Mike and Engineer Chen, right? MBA Mike works for a legacy auto giant. His key performance indicators are shareholder yield. Mike spends his day engineering stock buybacks to artificially inflate earnings per share for the quarterly print. He slashes research and development because it's a drag on short-term operational expenditures. And he creates financialized value, right? Mike is optimizing for the option chain and the shareholder, right? Now, let's contrast that with Engineer Chen. Chen works for BYD in Shenzhen, and he is one of the 11 million, yes, million STEM graduates China printed out this fiscal year alone. China produces, get this into your head, more PhDs in 1 month than the United States does in a year. That is what we call a labor supply shock. Chen works the model of 996, right? He's at work the most hours that God can give 6 days a week, essentially. 9 until 9, 6 days a week. His mandate isn't the stock price. It's efficiency. His job is to squeeze 1% more density out of a sodium ion cell, for example. If he needs a prototype, he prints it in his house on a 3D printer. If Mike needs a prototype, he navigates a 6-month procurement cycle with a vendor in Mexico or in India. Do you see the difference here? This is the human capital moat that the Eastern nations, especially China, are building up. The West has financialized every aspect of its economy. We have great bankers, and China has engineered its economy. They have great builders and great engineers. So when you're short BYD, you aren't betting against a ticker by itself. You are betting against a literal leveraged army of engineers iterating product cycles at 4x velocity. While Mike is in the canteen debating the front size of his pitch decks, Chen has just filled his 50th patent. This is what we call compound intellectual interest, rather than the financialized and securitized compounding that Mike and the Western model are doing. Now, China has realized that for a long time, this model is valuable. Competition, high-level graduates, but it has come at the cost of something called involution. So the bear case on China is usually, oh, they're in a deflationary spiral and internal competition is going to whittle away any of their national champions and therefore all of the profits. And in China, they call that involution. It's a zero-sum game where margins race to zero. Not evolution, involution. Are you with me? I hope so. So the domestic Chinese electric vehicle market is a bloodbath. It's a Hunger Games. It's a liquidation event for the weak hands. But BYD are executing this expansionary strategy to break the involution loop. They are pivoting to high beta luxury products. So if you look at some of their models like the U8, it's a $150,000 SUV. It floats. It does tank turns. It has 4 independent motors. And this isn't a car, it's a tech demo, right? It signals a move up in the yield curve. BYD make trains, they make drones, they make cars, they make boats, they make everything. BYD is capturing the entire demand spectrum. Low end, which is the $10,000 Seagull. That's a volume play, right? Get the numbers out, churn them out, volume play, address the total addressable market that's not in the luxury order. The high end, the supercars, and the electric buses and the grid storage and the nuclear power stations and the drones. This is what I'm saying. BYD might actually be the best company on earth. They might actually be the biggest company in 10 years and you just don't see it coming now. Look how all of these Chinese companies start by making mobile phones and then they end up making cars and trains and planes and drones. It's because the technology actually isn't that different and they have the economies of scales and they have the human capital to make it possible. But what is the fuel? What is the momentum? What is the gasoline for this stack? Well, is it nuclear baseload? I think so. While the West faces grid instability, China is rolling out Generation 4 nuclear reactors at scale. They are making more nuclear reactors than the Western nations combined. BYD factories are literally plugging into a grid with declining marginal cost. Some places where the energy is like negative. They pay you to take it. Cheap labor plus cheap energy plus intellectual property equals unbeatable unit scalability and unit economics. So, I mean, you've stuck with me this far. So we might as well talk about the trade, right? What's the trade? That's what we're here for. This is literally called the House of Trade. So if you look at the industrial capacity, the raw physics of manufacturing, BYD is the apex predator. It's predating on everything else in the market. The only headwind here is probably protectionism. The US has slapped a 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles, and Europe is busy away erecting trade barriers. Why? Well, the answer is obvious, because the politicians have seen the data and they can forecast and extrapolate into the future. That's what they get paid to do, even though they're probably very terrible at it. They know that in a free market, legacy auto is rapidly becoming insolvent. The tariffs are essentially hospice care, right? But here is the reality for the global macro trader, like me and hopefully like you. You cannot tariff the global south. BYD is literally capturing Southeast Asia, Latin America, the Middle East, and Africa. They're building capacity in Hungary, in Mexico, all to bypass the walls and to get past the trade barriers and the tariffs. And they're diversifying their geopolitical exposure, not to mention the fact that they're literally in every single market, from high-tech, semiconductors, microchips, nuclear power, wind power, solar, cars, planes, trains, boats. They're integrated vertically everywhere. So what's the setup? The West is betting on brand heritage and protectionism. BYD is betting on unit economics and innovation velocity. I know where I'd like to be invested, and I can also see these companies are severely undervalued on sales ratios, on price to earnings ratios, on forward multiples compared to their Western comps, right? So over a long enough time horizon, physics always beats politics. It's just the way it is. It's just the way of the world. It's the science at the end of the day, right? And it's unedifying, if that's the word. BYD is the signal that the American century of industrial dominance has officially plateaued and been capped out. I know what I'm doing. I'm going long Mandarin lessons and I'm shorting American auto. You need to manage your risk. You need to subscribe. You need to share. You need to like. This is Justin Banton, the House of Trade. Ciao for now.